I can't do this anymore. If this is the way I have to do winter, I don't know how long I can live in a tiny house. Hey guys, welcome back to the Trailhead. My name is Jen and this is my not so tiny house. In today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about what has been the absolute hardest part of tiny house living for me, and that is winter. You should know that I actually love a Colorado winter. I love to ski and snowshoe and run in the white stuff all winter long. I'm from Texas, so I love that all of the holiday songs actually make sense here. Plus, is there anything better than a white Christmas? I don't think so. That said, winter in a tiny house, entirely different experience. In the almost 3 years that I've lived in this tiny house, I've experienced water freezing pretty much everywhere that it is coming in and going out of this tiny house. In fact, it's not even officially winter yet in the Colorado Front Range, and we've already had our first snow and freezing temps of the season. And I'm ecstatic to tell you that all of my systems held up down to about 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm gonna show you all the places I winterize the tiny house to keep the water flowing all winter long, plus a couple of bonus spots inside that you might not have even thought of. Let's jump into winter, y'all. Let's head outside and I'll show you how I keep water flowing into the tiny house. Let's start with the most important element, and that is the heated hose. I have this 50-foot Camco heated hose, which was recommended by my builder, and pretty much everyone I know in the tiny house community uses this hose. No matter which hose you choose, I highly recommend using a water pressure regulator. Here's why. My home was delivered in January of 2021, so I went straight into winter. We had our first big storm about 2 weeks later, and I woke up to the sight of water flooding in my landlord's backyard because this hose started leaking, and I mean spewing frozen water everywhere. I took a video and sent it to Camco, and they said they had never seen anything like it. Even my builder said he had never heard of anything like this. Thankfully, the hose was under warranty and Camco has excellent customer service, so they shipped me a new one. But just 2 weeks later, when the next storm hit, it all happened again. So I sent another video to Camco, and this time they said they highly advised starting with one of these regulators. The reason is because city water pressure can go up to about 100 psi, but your hose needs to be between 40 and 60 psi, or you will have lots of problems, which is what I was having. The first mistake I made was going and getting a real fancy water pressure regulator with a gauge on it so I could see what the pressure was and I could adjust it. It seemed like the smartest thing to me and to my landlord, but just a week into hooking it up, I had my water pressure going all over the place. It was like full blast, and then it would totally stop. And then we realized it was so bulky that we were having a hard time keeping it warm, and when it froze, it stopped working. So I chunked that. I went back to this little regulator, and I cannot say enough good things about it. I've never had to replace one of these. You can get it at Home Depot or Amazon. I'll drop a link below. It's really easy to keep warm with the system that I have set up. So let me show you how I do that. And so as you can see, I have my water pressure regulator on there attached to my hose. Then I wrap it in foil to keep it warm. And then I attach foam pipe insulation to both sides of it to keep it warm. As you can see, I tie it on with jute tie instead of tape, and the reason is I've had so many issues with water that when you go out there and you're trying to get it apart, the tape is a total nightmare to work with. Plus, it never sticks back together. So this system of just tying it on works great. It's really easy to undo if you need to get to something, and it's really easy to put back on, and you're not wasting any material. So that is what I recommend. And last but not least, I cover the whole thing with an industrial strength trash can just to keep everything inside dry and warm and safe from the winter elements. I put a brick on top to keep it from blowing away. And as you can see, I leave a little space between the rocks so that my hose doesn't get pinched as it's coming out. On the other end of the hose where it attaches to the house, I also heat that part because even though the hose is heated, the brass fitting where the hose attaches to the house will freeze. Last year I thought just adding insulation and a frost freeze cover would do the trick, but it froze. So I've upgraded my system this year with heat tape, and as I said, it worked great through the first storm. Here's how I do that. First, I wrap everything in heavy duty aluminum foil. This protects the hose from, anything melting once I put the heat tape on. When I put the heat tape on, I wrap it around, making sure that it does not overlap on itself. If this heat tape overlaps on itself, it is a fire hazard. It says so all over the packaging. I have seen people do it anyway and risk it. It's not worth the risk to me. I don't want a fire hazard in the middle of winter. I'm already just trying to keep my water from freezing. Once that is in place, I add my insulation and then I tape it all really snug. I feel like the system is going to be good for the whole winter. If anything, I might just add another layer of insulation, but so far it seems to be working great. So I'm going to leave that system alone. I want to point out that when I first moved into this house, the water was not connecting to the front of the house like this. It actually was connecting to my sink, which was underneath the house and behind these 3 tires. I mean, I had a lot of issues my first winter, so I was underneath this house constantly unhooking and rehooking it, and to the point that I was like, I can't do this anymore. If this is the way I have to do winter, I don't know how long I can live in a tiny house. So I called my builder and said, hey, this water issue is not your problem, but this system is really making it difficult for me to fix it myself. And this is what happens when you have an amazing builder. Mitch came out on a Sunday and moved that connection to the outside of my house. And I am so thankful. It is much easier to deal with now that the connection is right on the outside of the house. So if you're building your home now or laying it out, make sure that your water connection is in a spot that it is really easy to work with. And then on the Camco side, as I mentioned, they have great customer service and an excellent warranty. What I'd rather do instead of going back and forth with Camco is to make my own hose. I have talked to people that made their own heated hose using just a regular RV water hose and foil and heat tape and pipe insulation. They said it worked for over 15 years. The problem is, as you can see, my water line as well as my high-speed internet and my power cord all have to cross this driveway. And so it is in this conduit to keep it safe from anything that drives through here. If I made my own heated hose, it would not fit in this conduit, and therefore I can't use it. So that's just one more thing to keep in mind if you're still looking for a parking spot. Look around and see, like, are you gonna have to run a bunch of things across a driveway? The closer all your systems are to their connections, the easier it's all gonna be. Not to mention, my heated hose has to go half the length of my house and then cross the driveway, and all of that length makes the hose cost more. I also have one more shout out to Camco, who obviously is not paying me for this segment because I've been through a lot of Camco hoses. But here's what they did for me. The last time I needed a hose replaced, I just said, hey, the hose I'm using is rated to minus 20 degrees. Would it make more sense for me to get one that's rated to minus 40 degrees? Because it's double the price, but if this is the one that works, let me know. I'll happily pay the difference if you could just send me that one. They actually never responded, but they just sent me the minus 40 hose. I'm sure at that point they were sick of me as I was of them, and they probably were like, just send it to her so she'll leave us alone. At any rate, the hose it's on now is the same one that I used at the end of last winter, so I'm really hoping that this is the hose to get me through more than just one winter. I'm gonna keep you posted if that doesn't work out. So let's move on to water going out of the house. I have a composting toilet, so I don't need sewage, but I do have a gray water system. Originally, that system was just a pipe that drained in the field behind my house. And I was a little skeptical about what would happen when it snowed, and I was right to be skeptical because on a few occasions, the pipe was completely encased in frozen snow or ice. One time, frozen debris blew in front of it and blocked it, and that caused the entire line to back up and freeze. So I had to go out with a blow dryer and a kettle with hot water and work on this thing until all of the ice finally came out of it. Since then, we upgraded our system and dug a 4-foot hole because I didn't know anything about a freeze line when I moved into this tiny house, but there is a freeze line, and that is the point at which below ground water no longer freezes. And where I am, that freeze line is 4 feet. So we had somebody dig a 4-foot hole, extended my drainage pipe to go down, added gravel and a tarp, and filled it back in, and that system has worked great. So I highly recommend, if you have the option to dig so that you avoid your water just going out behind your house, go that route. It has made a huge difference for me. That basically solves the water leaving the house part of the equation. But one morning I jumped in the shower and right from the get-go, I had standing water. None of the sinks were backed up, so my guess was something was happening right underneath my house. So I go outside to see what's happening and I see this frozen waterfall underneath the house. So I send the video to my builder and he explains to me that there is actually a P-trap under my house, which is standard in most plumbing systems. There's always a little bit of water sitting in that trap, so because it is on the outside of my house, it will freeze, and that is what happened. So I did some brainstorming with my landladies, and they recommended using this heated pet pad, which they use to wrap around pipes in their barn. It's waterproof, so it's super safe to have on the outside of the house. So I just wrapped it around, again, tied it on with some jute ties so it's easy to take on and off if something happens. I have not experienced any freezing water since that happened. Because it stays on all the time, I basically only plug it in when I know it's going to be 20 degrees or colder for a few days. If you're experiencing that problem, I hope it helps you. All right, guys, we're at the bonus round, and I'm going to talk about the two places inside the house where things have frozen. The first one is the water line that is on the inside of the house. In tiny houses, they normally do not install rigid copper or PVC pipe. Instead, I have this great flexible PEX system, which will expand when it freezes and contract when it warms up again. And that's a really good thing because I went out of town one time and there was a hard freeze while I was gone. Because this line is close to the outside of the house and is behind the drawers of my storage stairs, it isn't getting the heat in the house. So on 2 occasions it has frozen. Thankfully, because it is flexible, it did not burst while I was away. That would have been a very expensive fix. So all I had to do was pull the drawers out and hit it with a blow dryer, and it was flowing again, probably in less than 5 minutes. Sometimes if I know it's going to be really cold and I'm actually at home, I'll just pull these drawers out and leave a heater facing there so that the heat can get under. That can kind of be a pain though to go about your life when you've got drawers and heaters out in the middle of the house. This year I got pipe insulation and I'm wrapping it right around these lines to keep them warm. This should solve my issue. If it doesn't, I'm going to let you know. And the last spot where I've had trouble with freezing water is actually inside my washer dryer. Last year, just before Christmas, we were expecting a huge winter storm. So I decided to just play it safe and drain everything and stay with a friend. I was smart enough before I left to not only leave all of my faucets open so that if any water was still trapped in the lines inside and it expanded, it could make its way out and not mess up anything. Definitely do that if you're leaving town and you shut your water off. I also knew there was water sitting in the bottom of the washer dryer, so I drained that out, and honestly, I thought I was good to go. It seemed like everything was working great when I got back. I hooked up the hose, I got the water running, I plugged everything back in, and it was fine. On Christmas night, when the kids were away with their dad, I decided to just stay at my ex's house with the dogs because it was really cold and I didn't want to have to deal with going back and forth to watch them. Then at midnight, I woke up in a panic, like something was telling me I needed to come back and check on this house in case something was happening. When I walked in the door at 12:30 a.m., I could see water running from my bathroom all the way through the middle of the house. It was all coming from the washer dryer. I unplugged the washer dryer and water was still gushing out. I finally had to just shut off the water to the washer dryer, which thankfully is set up so that I can still run the main water to the house. What had happened was I left the vent going to the outside attached while I was gone, and that freezing cold air traveled right through that vent and into my hot and cold water exchange, and they froze. And so it didn't seem like there was a problem until it all thawed out that night and was just bursting everywhere. I did find a great repair guy in the area who came to fix it for me, but all in with parts, it was like $700. So let me save you some money, and if you are traveling or not in your RV or tiny house when a hard winter hits, drain all of the water out and remember to take that vent out, and just for the last storm, I just rolled up a towel and stuffed it in there, and that kept all that cold air from coming in. As you can see, a lot of blood, sweat, and especially tears went into figuring out all of these systems, so I truly hope it prevents you from going through all of the things that I've been through. I would love to know what you thought about this episode, so please head down and leave me any comments or questions that you have. Also, if you have winterizing tips for me, please take a second and share those with me below. I hope you guys have a super warm and toasty winter, and I will see you in the next episode.